Hello everybody, I'm back with you another video. This one is called The Flock Doomed for Slaughter. Luke 24:44. Then he said to them, These are my words that I spoke to you while I was with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled. So this means a lot. When you look at everything has to be fulfilled. There's a lot in the Old Testament that's never correlated by most pastors to the New Testament. The doomed flock. Zechariah 11 gives us a very interesting chapter to study. I'm going to read part of this and then discuss it. Starts with, Open your doors, O Lebanon, that a fire may feed on your cedars. Wail, O cypress, for the cedar has fallen, because the glorious trees have been destroyed. Wail, O oaks of Bashan, for the impenetrable forest has come down. There's a sound of the shepherd's wail, for their glory is ruined. There's a sound of the young lion's roar, for the pride of Jordan is ruined. Thus says Yahuwah my Elohim, pastor the flock, doomed to slaughter. Those who buy them, slay them, and go unpunished. And each of those who sell them says, Blessed be Yahuwah, for I have become rich. And their own shepherds have no pity on them. For I will no longer have pity on the inhabitants of the land, declares Yahuwah. But, behold, I will cause the men to fall, each into another's power, and into the power of his king. And they will strike the land, and I will not deliver them from their power. This is a strong 6 little verses here. First off, it's talking about cedars and trees, and the trees have been destroyed. Well, trees in the Bible are primarily speaking of people. It says the impenetrable forest has come down. So what thought it was impenetrable has been taken down. The shepherd in the Bible deals with pastors or leaders. And it says they're going to wail. Now, the person speaking here says, Yahuwah my Elohim has told him to pasture the flock doomed for slaughter. Here in a second you're going to see that this person is actually Yeshua that's speaking. So he knew that he was going to be pasturing a flock that was going to be slaughtered. Okay, we're going to move on to the next section. And I wanted to go over the tree thing first because I want you to know that this is biblically all tied together. Trees symbolize people in the Bible. In Isaiah 56:3, let not the foreigner who has been joined himself to Yahuwah say, Yahuwah will surely separate me from his people. And let not the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. So here we see the metaphor of a tree as being people. We see it again in Isaiah 34:4. All the host of heaven shall rot away, and the skies roll up like a scroll. All their hosts shall fall, as leaves fall from the vine, like leaves falling from the fig tree. So here again we see the people being a fig tree. Jeremiah 11:19. But I was like a gentle lamb led to slaughter. I did not know it was against me they devised schemes, saying, Let us destroy the tree with its fruit. Let us cut him off from the land of the living, that his name be remembered no more. So here we're talking about another tree and the fruit being more people. Matthew 3:9-10. And do not presume to say to yourselves, We have Abraham as our father. For I tell you, Elohim is able from these stones to raise up children for Abraham. Even now the axe is laid to the root of the trees. Every tree, therefore, that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So we have Yeshua here telling us that every tree or every person that doesn't bear good fruit is going to be cut down and thrown in the fire. So he's relaying people as trees in the New Testament as well as the Old. Moving on here to verse 7. As I pastured the flock doomed to slaughter, hence the afflicted of the flock. And I took for myself 2 staffs, the one I called favor, and that can also be translated grace, and the other I called union. As I pastured the flock, then I annihilated 3 shepherds in 1 month. For my soul was impatient with them, and their soul was weary of me. Then I said, I will not pasture you. What is to die, let it die. And what is to be annihilated, let it be annihilated. And let those who are left eat one another's flesh. I took my staff of favor, and I cut it in pieces, to break my covenant, which I had made with all the peoples. So it was broken on that day. And thus the afflicted of the flock, who were watching me, realized that it was not the word of Yahuwah. I said to them, if it is good in your sight, give me my wages, but if not, never mind. So they weighed out 30 shekels of silver as my wages. And then Yahuwah said to me, throw it to the potter, that magnificent price at which I was valued by them. So I took the 30 shekels of silver and threw them to the potter in the house of Yahuwah. Then I cut in pieces my second staff of union to break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. And we see this echoed in Jeremiah 15:2 also. Those who are for pestilence to pestilence, and those who are for the sword to the sword, and those that are for famine to famine, and those who are for captivity to captivity. It's also echoed in Revelations. I can't remember the exact verse at this moment. I probably should have put that in here. But again, we're talking about a flock doomed for slaughter. And we're talking about grace and union. The union being, you can tell at the bottom, by Judah and Israel, the brotherhood. It's kind of scary, though, because all our pastors talk about Judas betraying Yeshua, but we never hear of anybody else's betrayal, really. And here we have Yeshua in the Old Testament telling us there were 3 shepherds in 1 month that he annihilated because they betrayed him. And we know this is him speaking in this chapter because of the 30 pieces of silver and it being thrown to the potter, because that's mentioned again in the New Testament. Isaiah 9 in context. When Yeshua was born, in Isaiah 9, verses 6 through 7, the people did not accept him as Messiah. This is prophesied in Isaiah, Zechariah, Jeremiah, Malachi. Thus Yahuwah allows a huge deception to occur. Satan's been cast out of heaven and was trying to stop the Messiah's new kingdom. This is how Isaiah 9, verse 6 through 7. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulder. His name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty Elohim, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. Upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with the judgment and justice. From that time forward, even forever, the zeal of Yahuwah of hosts will perform this. Continues on in verse 8. Yahuwah has sent a word against Jacob, and it will fall on Israel, and all the people will know, Ephraim and the inhabitants of Samaria, who say in pride and arrogance of heart, the bricks have fallen, but we will build with dressed hewed stones. The sycamores, or those are figs, have been cut down, but we will put up cedars in their place. But Yahuwah raises the adversaries of Rezin against him, and stirs up his enemies. The Syrians on the east and the Philistines on the west devour Israel with an open mouth. For all his anger has not turned away, and his hand is stretched out still. The dressed stones and cedars are monetarily much more valuable. This statement is about wealth and changing things. The statement is about doing things with arrogance, pride, wealth, rather than Yahuwah's wishes. The comparison of the cedars and sycamores can also be seen in 1 Kings 10:27. The king made silver as common as stones in Jerusalem, and he made cedars as plentiful as sycamore trees that are in the lowland. We were but weak when the enemy overcame us, but we will make ourselves so strong that we will neither care for our enemies nor fear Elohim. This is talking about pride, and what we see in Proverbs 16:18, pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before the fall. I think this verse, it's been used in modern prophecy for the Twin Towers falling down and then building back and planting the sycamore and all this stuff, planting the cedar for the sycamore. But I think it also speaks to right after Yeshua had ascended, because a lot of times prophecies and Bible history repeats itself. It's like when you see one thing, you'll see it again in the future. It happens again. And it's like a foreshadow of what's coming. It continues on. Verse 13. The people did not turn to him who struck them, nor inquire of Yahuwah of hosts. So Yahuwah cut off Israel head and tail, the palm branch and the reed in one day. The elder and the honored man, he is the head, and the prophet who teaches the lies, the tail. For those who guide this people have been leading them astray, and those who are guided by them are swallowed up. Therefore Yahuwah does not rejoice over the young men, and has no compassion for the fatherless and the widow, for everyone is godless and an evildoer, and every mouth speaks folly. For all this his anger has not turned away, and his hand is stretched out still. When Yeshua was born, the people did not accept him as Messiah, as was prophesied in all these books, and a huge deception occurs. At that time Messiah comes, Satan is also cast out of heaven, and tries to stop the Messiah's new kingdom. You see that in Revelation 12:7. The final condemnation by Yahuwah is part of his wrath, because the people choose to follow evil, not good. Isaiah tells of two main people this occurs from, due to the deception that had to be Peter and Paul, because it talks about an elder and an honored man, who's the head, and the prophet who teaches lies, that is the tail. Now, if you don't understand about Paul, you need to watch my videos on Paul, because he definitely was the teacher of lies. Even the Qumran documents coming out of the Qumran caves show him as the spouter of lies. He's not who people think he was, and I think it's a test by Yahuwah to be personally honest about how I think about it. But he's talking about all of us, essentially, because we are the people that came after Yeshua, and we've all been led astray. If you read very much of the prophets in the Old Testament, this pattern is repeated over and over and over about the evil one coming and leading astray, because people did not accept Yeshua. Yeshua warned us those not producing the right fruit would be burned. In John 15:6, if a man does not abide with me, he is thrown away like a pruned, shriveled up branch, and they gather it and throwing it into the fire to burn. Okay, so when we continue on here in Isaiah, in verse 18, it says, for wickedness burns like a fire, it consumes briars and thorns. It kindles the thickets of the forest, and they roll upward in a column of smoke. Through the wrath of Yahuwah of hosts, the land is scorched, and the people are like fuel for the fire. No one spares another. They slice meat on the right, but they're still hungry, and they devour on the left, but they're not satisfied. Each devours the flesh of his own arm. Manasseh devours Ephraim, and Ephraim devours Manasseh. Together they are against Judah. For all this his anger is not turned away, and his hand is still outstretched. I think this burning like a fire consumes is not a literal fire. I think it is a spiritual fire of the sheep being consumed. It's like the people think they're following Yeshua and they're not. So they're being consumed. And this is actually a curse by Yahuwah. Now John confirms for us that people went out from them that weren't from him. In 1 John 2:19, they went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they'd have been of us, they would have no doubt have continued with us. But they went out that they might be made manifest that they were not all of us. Here we see Yeshua in Matthew 24:24 telling us, for false Christ and false prophets will rise and show signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. And then you have Paul over here in 2 Corinthians 12:12 mirroring the same warning that Yeshua gave. The signs of a true apostle were performed among you with utmost patience, with signs and wonders and mighty works. And Yeshua tells us in Matthew 7:20, therefore by their fruits you shall know them. 40,000 denominations later and billions of followers not following Yeshua's laws. What happened? Yeshua with his own words points to the prophets to read, for us to read them. He knew what would be done before it was even done. In Matthew 26:31-35, then Yeshua told them, this very night you will fall away on account of me, for it's written, I will strike the shepherd, and the shepherd of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee. And Peter replied, even if all fall away on account of you, I will never will. Truly I tell you, Yeshua answered him, this very night before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. But Peter declared, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. And all the other disciples said the same. And Matthew 10:33 indicate that Peter's sin was deadly serious. Because this is what Yeshua says in that verse. Whoever disowns me before others, I will also deny before my Father in heaven. That's scary. This verse from Matthew 26:31-35, and Yeshua tells them this very night, you'll fall away on account of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. Well, these little bells should go up when you see these quotes from the Old Testament, and go back and read those chapters and see what those chapters tell you. It's showing you something important every time he quotes the Old Testament. Zechariah 13 is what he's quoting. Verse 7-9. Awake, O sword, against my shepherd. against the man who stands next to me, declares Yahuwah of hosts. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered, and I will turn my hand against the little ones in the whole land, declares Yahuwah. 2/3 shall be cut off and perish, and 1/3 shall be left alive. And I will put this third into the fire, and refine them as one refines silver, and test them as gold is tested. They will call upon my name, I will answer them, and I will say, they are my people, and they will say, Yahuwah is my Elohim. This verse, these few verses, if you don't take anything else to heart, you better take this to heart, because 2/3 are going to be wiped out. And this isn't happening in the very tribulation. This has been happening for almost 2,000 years. Yahuwah is mad. He's very mad. He's not happy with anything right now. He's against the shepherds and what they've been teaching. He's against the man that stands next to him. That was Peter. He said, strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. 2/3 will be cut off and perish. That's a lot. And the 1/3 left is going to go through and be refined and tested. We have to work hard. It's like he said, many are called, few are chosen. I remember when I first realized about Paul, I was so upset. I kept crying. And I went to bed that night and I was like, why? You know. And when I woke up, I was dreaming. Many are called, but few are chosen. I was dreaming I was reading the Bible. And I know he was trying to tell me, it's like, you know, this is the reality of it. And we have to really want to be with Yahuwah after we die. We have to die to this world. We have to not want the things of this world. We have to change. If we don't change, we're not going to make it. So we're left with who left the flock. The hired hands had to be the apostles. John 10:12 tells us, he who is the hired hand and not the shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. The wolf snatches them and scatters them. And see, Yeshua told us in John 10:16 also that there's one fold and one shepherd. So we have all these, the hired hands here. There was a wolf coming. He's warning in a parable, and he knew what was going to happen according to the Old Testament. Let's look at the accounts of Peter's denial. Luke 22:54 through 63. Then they seized him and led him away, bringing him into the high priest's house. Peter was following at a distance, and when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down among them. Then a servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the light and looking closely at him, said, this man was with him. But he denied it, saying, woman, I do not know him. And a little later someone else saw him and said, you are one of them. But Peter said, man, I am not. And after an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying, certainly this man was with him, for he too is a Galilean. But Peter said, man, I don't know what you are talking about. And immediately, while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. And the master turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the saying of the master, how he had said to him, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. Let's look at Matthew's account of Peter's denial. And I went and looked this up in the literal translation because I wanted to make sure it was accurate. A lot of times I use a lot of Bibles, but I like the English Standard Version because it's a pretty literal translation. I don't like that I don't have a copy that has restored names, but it's easy to understand, and I just insert the appropriate names when I come to them. But this Etsefer's another very good Bible. It's a little harder for me to pronounce the words because it has a lot of words in Hebrew, but I do like it a lot. King James, of course, is a good basic Bible. It does have its problems too, though. But I went to this literal. This is the Disciples literal. They do a very good job when I check it to an interlineary. And it's really amazing when you look at his denials here. Let's look at Matthew 26, 69 through 75. Now Peter was sitting outside the courtyard, and one servant girl came to him, saying, "You also were with Yeshua the Galilean." But the one denied it in front of everyone, saying, "I do not know what you are saying. I do not know what you are saying." And he, having gone out to the gate, another saw him. And she says to the ones to hear, "This is the one with Yeshua the Nazarene." And again he denied it with an oath, that I do not know the man. And having come to him after a little while, the one standing there said to Peter, "Truly you are the one of them, and even your speaking makes you evident." Then he began to curse and to swear with an oath that I did not know the man. And immediately a rooster crowed, and Peter remembered the word Yeshua had spoken, that before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And having gone outside, he wept bitterly. Now I'm reminded here, you go back to Matthew 10:33, this was a deadly sin on Peter's part, because it said, "Whoever disowns me before others, I will also deny before my Father in heaven." And not only did Peter deny him 3 times, he denied him twice with an oath, and one of those times with an oath and swearing and cursing. Looking here more, I went in more depth looking at Peter after I realized what was in Zechariah and these other prophets about immediately after Yeshua's born, betrayed and all. And looking at Yeshua's thoughts about it, I went back to search the New Testament for things that I thought might give clues to who these people were that were betraying him. And when you look at Peter more closely, it's kind of scary. In Matthew 16:22, then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him and said, "Oh no, Master, this will never happen to you." Now, you got to consider, this is the Son of Yahuwah on earth. Who in their right mind would rebuke the Son of Yahuwah? That really stands in my mind when I saw that word rebuke. It's like, you don't rebuke Elohim. Matthew 16:22 through 23. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "Far be it from you, Master. This shall never happen to you." But he turned and he said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of Elohim, but on the things of man." So he's calling Peter Satan at that point. Matthew 14:31. Immediately Yeshua reached out his hand, caught hold of him, and said to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" So he's also reprimanding him for doubt and for keeping his mind on the things of man. He called him Satan. Matthew 19:27, then Peter responded to him, look, we've left everything and followed you. So what will there be for us? I'm sorry, but that verse just really bothers me. It's like we shouldn't be standing there with our hand out. What do we get? What do we get? It's like we should want to serve because we want to serve, not to get something in return. Matthew 26:40. Then he came to his disciples and found them sleeping. He asked Peter, so you couldn't stay awake with me for 1 hour? So he was very disappointed. 1 hour is not a lot of time to ask. Luke 5:8. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Yeshua's knees and said, go away from me because I am a sinful man, Master. So I don't know if he knew that his nature was not good, or from that statement he must have. But these are some pretty strong things that happened during the course of mostly Matthew's recording what was going on. This is an interesting verse too, the betrayal and questions of the betrayal. In John 21:20 through 23, this is one of the last things John records for us. He said, so Peter turned around and saw the disciple Yeshua loved following them. That disciple was the one who leaned back against Yeshua at the supper and asked, Master, who is the one that's going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he said to Yeshua, Master, what about him? If I want him to remain until I come, Yeshua answered, what is that to you? As for you, follow me. So this report spread to the brothers that the disciples would not die, yet Yeshua did not tell him that he wouldn't die. But if I want him to remain until I come, what is that to you? So, again, we see Peter, even after, the resurrection and all, still questioning Yeshua. Zechariah 13:2-7. And on that day, declares Yahuwah of hosts, I will cut off the names of the idols from the land, so that they shall be remembered no more. And I will remove from the land the prophets and the spirit of uncleanness. And if anyone again prophesies, his father and mother who bore him will say to him, you shall not live, for you speak lies in the name of Yahuwah. And his father and mother who bore him shall pierce him through when he prophesies. On that day every prophet will be ashamed of his vision when he prophesies. He will not put on a hairy cloak in order to deceive, but he will say, I am no prophet. I am a worker of the soil, for a man sold me in my youth. And if one ask him, what are these wounds on your back, he will say, the wounds I received in the house of my friends. Awake, O sword, against my shepherd, against the man who stands next to me, declares Yahuwah of hosts. Again, we see this theme of the people standing next to him, which indicates people that were right after while he was there on earth, and not like much later. And then when they're talking about the names of the idols, I keep thinking of, it keeps coming to my mind, like naming all the churches after St. Paul, St. Peter, the Marys, and all these things. It's like these people were, Paul and Peter particularly, were prophesying new stuff even after Yeshua had arisen. Now, some of the books outside of the Bible, and I don't usually go to them, but I have read a lot of them, tell you that there will be no more prophecies after John. So that kind of makes me wonder too, because if you've got tons of writers saying this thing about John, and then we have that statement by Yeshua about the law and the prophets were until John, what he's saying is there won't be any more new after John. What we have is what we have. And we look at Matthew 11:20 through 24. Then he began to denounce the cities where most of his mighty works had been done, because they did not repent. Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the mighty works done in you had been done in Tyre or Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. But I tell you, it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for Tyre and Sidon than for you. And you, Capernaum, will you be exalted to heaven? You will be brought down to Hades. For if the mighty works done in you had been done in Sodom, it would have remained until this day. But I tell you, it will be more tolerable on the day of judgment for the land of Sodom than for you. So this was something I didn't realize the first few times I read the New Testament and studied it, was that he is actually condemning these cities where he went and performed these miracles because they didn't repent. They did not follow him. And many people don't realize Malachi 2:1 through 9 tells us that we are cursed. We are a cursed group or a flock. I'm going to read this to you. Therefore, this decree is for you, priest. If you don't listen and you don't take to heart to honor my name, says Yahuwah of hosts, I will send a curse among you, and I will curse your blessings. And I've already begun to curse them, because you are not taking to heart. Look, I'm going to rebuke your descendants, so that's us. And I will spread animal waste over your faces, and waste from your festal sacrifices, and you will be taken away with it. Then you will know that I sent you this decree, so my covenant with Levi may continue, says Yahuwah of hosts. My covenant with him was the one of life and peace, and I gave these to him. It called for reverence, and he reverenced me and stood in awe of my name. True instruction was in his mouth, and nothing wrong was found on his lips. He walked with me in a peace and fairness, and turned many from sin. For the lips of a priest should guard knowledge, and people should seek instruction from his mouth, because he is the messenger of Yahuwah of hosts. You, on the other hand, have turned from the way. You've caused many to stumble by your instruction, and you violated the covenant of Levi, says Yahuwah of hosts. So I, in turn, have made you despised and humiliated before all people, because you're not keeping my ways, but you are showing partiality in your instructions. So we see here that what happens after Yeshua comes is not what he wanted to have happen. And we are actually under a curse, and we are that flock doomed for slaughter. Peter was led where he didn't want to go. In John 21:18, Yeshua says, Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. John reported probably after Peter died. He said this to signify what kind of death he would glorify Elohim. So the idea that Peter was crucified with his hands stretched out came from John. But this doesn't include the location or the physical position of the crucifixion. It's more about an action and a place he would go, more than a type of death he would have. And I think it speaks to him following Paul off to Rome. Now, we see in Galatians 2:11 through 13, when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face because he was condemned. For before certain ones came from James, he was eating with the Gentiles. But when they came, he was drawing back and separating himself, fearing the ones of the circumcision. And other Judeans also joined in the hypocrisy with him, so that even Barnabas was carried away with hypocrisy. So Peter was doing what he wanted when the circumcision people weren't around, and then and by circumcision people, what Paul is referring to is the Judeans from Jerusalem. When they were around, he was withdrawing back and separating himself again. So he was following the law when the Judeans were around, and when they weren't, then he was doing what he wanted. So that was making Paul mad. Of course, we know Paul was against anything dietary, which goes against Yeshua's teachings even in Revelation 2, chapter 2 and 3. So Paul was in major error with that. We know for a fact that Peter was actually in Rome from Clement of Rome's letters around 90 AD. He said in his letters, "Let us take the noble examples of our own generation. Through jealousy and envy, the greatest and most just pillars of the church were persecuted, and came even unto death. Peter, though unjust envy, endured not one, but two, but many labors, and at last having delivered his testimony, departed us in the place of glory due to him." Not much there as the means of the location of his death, but that he was executed is very clear. Ignaz, in his letters to Rome about 110 AD, claimed that Peter was the Bishop of Rome. So we have pretty clear historical indicators that, yes, Peter and Paul did start the church in Rome. Now let's look at this passage about feeding my sheep, and this is the Old Testament passage, which is different, and this is something we need to really look at. I want to remind you of Luke 24:44. Now I said to them, "These are my words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all things which are written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled." So this had to be fulfilled in order for Yeshua to even be the real Messiah. Ezekiel 34:1-9. Then the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, "Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to those shepherds, Thus says Yahuwah Elohim, Woe, shepherds of Israel, who have been feeding themselves. Should not shepherds feed the flock? You eat the fat and clothe yourself with wool. You slaughter the fat sheep without feeding the flock. Those who are sickly you have not strengthened. The diseased you have not healed. The broken you've not bound up. The scattered you've not brought back. Nor have you sought for the lost. But with force and severity you have dominated them. They were scattered for lack of a shepherd, and they became food for every beast of the field, and were scattered. My flock wandered through all the mountains, and on every high hill. My flock was scattered over the surface of the earth, and there was no one to search or seek for them. Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of Yahuwah. As I live, declares Yahuwah Elohim, surely, because my flock has become a prey, my flock has even become food for the beast of the field, for lack of a shepherd. And my shepherds did not search for my flock, but rather the shepherds fed themselves, and did not feed my flock. Therefore, you shepherds, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says Yahuwah Elohim, Behold, I am against the shepherds, and I will demand my sheep from them, and make them cease from feeding sheep. So the shepherds will not feed themselves any more, but I will deliver my flock from their mouth, so that they will not be food for them. Some pretty strong words. He's talking about what happened after he left. The shepherds did not feed the flock. They didn't do what he asked, and they left everybody with the wrong instructions. Now, 3 times, Yeshua asked Peter, "Do you love me?" Let's read that. John 21:15 through 25. When they'd finished breakfast, Yeshua said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Master, you know I love you." And he said to him, "Feed my lambs." He said to him a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Master, you know I love you." And he said to them, "Tend my sheep." He said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was grieved because he said to him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Master, you know everything. You know I love you." And Yeshua said to him, "Feed my sheep. Truly, truly, I say, when you were young," and this is when he brought this up, "you dressed yourself and you walked wherever you wanted. When you're old, you'll stretch out your hands and another will dress you and carry you where you don't want to go." This was to show what kind of death he would glorify Elohim. And after saying that, he said to him, "Follow me." Now I'll tell you, if you got the son of Yahuwah sitting there telling you 3 times, or asking you 3 times, "Do you love me?" there's a reason. If you look at the Bible, anytime Yahuwah says, "Verily, verily, I tell you," or says or repeats itself more than once, it's important. He was making a point with Peter. He knew what Peter was going to do. Peter went off to Rome, started the Catholic Church, and him and Paul started the beast system. And he knew what would happen. It just tears me up. Now, if y'all come up with a different scenario from all this, please tell me. But this is what I'm seeing, and so I'm putting it out there because people need to really be thinking about what they're doing. Listen to the words of Yeshua. Live in his words. Concentrate on what he said. Even when you're reading the Old Testament, it's a lens. Somebody told me this. They always look at the Old Testament as a lens, through the lens of Yeshua, which is a good way to look at it, because he came to teach the righteousness and to correct the things that were wrong. So I'm telling you, if you want to make that many are chosen, but many are called, but few are chosen. If you want to be one of those chosen, stay in your gospel. Stay in the words of Yeshua. Let them be burned in you. Don't forget them. Don't worry about what Paul said. If you want to make it, don't listen to Paul. Paul was an antichrist. I know I'm pretty strong on this, but I'm really seriously seeing this stuff and it's scaring me. Ezekiel 22:23 through 31. And the word of Yahuwah came to me, "Son of man, say to her, your land that's not cleansed or rained on in days of indignation. There's a conspiracy of the prophets in the midst, like a roaring lion tearing the prey. And they've devoured souls, they've taken treasures and precious things, and they've made many windows in the midst of her. Her priests have done violence to my law, and they've profaned my holy things, and they have made no distinction between the holy and the profane. They've not taught the difference between the clean and the unclean, and they hide their eyes from my Sabbaths, and I am profaned among them. Her princes," and that word in Strong's means leaders, elders, chiefs, "within her are like wolves ravening the prey. By shedding blood and destroying souls in order to get dishonest gain. Her prophets have smeared whitewash for them, seeing false visions, divining lies for them, saying, 'Thus says the Master Elohim,' when Yahuwah has not spoken. The people of the land have practiced oppression, committed robbery, and have wronged the poor and the needy, and they've oppressed the sojourner without justice. I searched for a man among them who would build up the wall and stand in the gap before me for the land, so that I would not destroy it, but I found no one. Thus I've poured out my indignation on them. I've consumed them with the fire of my wrath. Their way I have brought upon their hands, declares Yahuwah. Now, when you see Paul and Peter, it's like, one of them saying, Peter says, the Spirit told me. And then Paul, Jesus appeared to me, or Yeshua. I shouldn't even use that term, but Jesus is more correct with Paul because Jesus was false. Yeshua was real. And when I look at how he's saying that he's brought upon their heads, look at the persecution that happened starting in 35 AD and that first just 60 years. I mean, he certainly did fulfill this. I mean, he poured it out on them. I think he was angry. Okay, did the apostles destroy the way? The verse we just read, it said that they destroyed the way. Matthew 13:41. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of the kingdom all causes of sin, all lawbreakers, and throw them in the fiery furnace. So Yeshua is telling us he's going to take the lawbreakers, and he's going to throw them in a fiery furnace when he comes. Matthew 16:27. For the Son of Man is going to come in his glory of his Father and his angels, and he will render to each one according to his practice. Does he say that he's just going to give you salvation? No. He said he's going to render to each one according to their practice or their works. Now, let's look at what the apostles said in Paul. In Romans 8:1, is there now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus? So he's saying there's no condemnation for you, no matter what you do. That's not true. That's not what Yeshua said. And also, he uses Christ Jesus. There is no Christ Jesus. That is a pagan deity that Paul made up. There's only Yeshua, the son of Elohim, or the son of Yahuwah. Acts 15:11. But we believe we are saved through grace of Lord Jesus, just as they will. They followed Paul. They went with the grace thing. That is not what Yeshua came and taught. I'm sorry, folks, but it's not. I know this probably scares people, and it scares people that I'm questioning it, but I think we are idiots if we don't question it. You have Yeshua teaching specific things and telling you what he's going to judge you on. He does it in all four Gospels. He does it in Revelation. And then you have people coming behind him and say, oh no, I saw a vision. Oh no, I heard from the Holy Spirit. No, it's changed. I'm sorry, that's not right. There's a problem here. Let's look at Jeremiah 23:1-4. Woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture. This is Yahuwah's declaration. Therefore, this is what Yahuwah, the Elohim of Israel, says about the shepherds who shepherd my people. You've scattered my flock, banished them. You've not attended to them. I will attend to you because of your evil acts. This is Yahuwah's declaration. I will gather the remnant of my flock from all the lands where I have banished them, and I will return them to their grazing land. They will become fruitful and numerous. I will raise up shepherds over them who will shepherd them. They will no longer be afraid or dismayed, nor will any be missing. This is Yahuwah's declaration. So he's telling you, he's going to gather us, but he's only going to gather those that are following his law. He's not coming after those following Paul. and following Peter and them. He's going to come after those that listened to his word. But Paul says, and then Peter backs him up, and they all go along with it. That's exactly what happened. Let's look at Jeremiah further, 23. My heart is broken within me, and my bones tremble. I become like a drunkard, like a man overcome by wine, because of Yahuwah, because of his holy words. For the land is full of adulterers, and the land mourns because of the curse, and the grazing lands of the wilderness have dried up. Their way has become evil, and their power is not rightly used, because both prophet and priest are ungodly, even in my house. I found their evil. This is Yahuwah's declaration. Therefore their way will be to them a slippery path in the gloom. They'll be driven away and fall down from there, for I will bring disaster on them, the year of their punishment. This is Yahuwah's declaration. Among the prophets of Samaria I saw something disgusting. They prophesied by Baal, and led my people Israel astray. Among the prophets of Jerusalem also I saw a horrible thing. They commit adultery and walk in lies. They strengthen the hands of evildoers, and none turns his back on evil. They are like Sodom to me. Jerusalem's residents are like Gomorrah. Therefore this is what Yahuwah of hosts says concerning the prophets. I'm about to feed them wormwood and give poisoned water to drink. For from the prophets of Jerusalem ungodliness has spread throughout the land. Now let's look Romans 5:4. But to him that worketh not, but believeth on him that justifies the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness. No, it's not. In Exodus, Yahuwah tells you he will never justify the ungodly. Acts 15:11. But we believe we are saved through grace of the Lord Jesus, just as they will be. They may have believed that, but that's not what Yeshua taught, and it's not what Yahuwah in the Old Testament taught. Jeremiah 23:16-20. This is what Yahuwah of hosts says. Do not listen to the words of the prophets who prophesy to you. They are making you worthless. They speak visions from their own minds, not from Yahuwah's mouth. They keep on saying, those who despise me, Yahuwah has said, we will have peace. They have said to everyone who follows the stubbornness of his heart, no harm will come to you. For who has stood the counsel of Yahuwah to see and hear his word? Who has paid attention to his word and obeyed? Look, a storm from Yahuwah. Wrath has gone out, a whirling storm. It will whirl about the heads of the wicked. Yahuwah's anger will not turn back until he's completely fulfilled the purpose of his hearts. In the latter days, you will understand it clearly. Well, right now I understand it clearly. They did exactly what he said in the Old Testament they were going to do. They walked in the stubbornness of their own heart. No harm will come to you. It's like, no, you just believe, and no matter how bad you are, and no matter how bad you continue to be, even though you say you repented, you can still keep sinning, and it's going to be okay. No harm's going to come to you. These words tell you what happened. You've got the words of the Old Testament and the New Testament, and they fit perfectly. They paint a picture. But you got to read the whole thing. You got to look at the whole picture. You can't just look at part of it. Well, if you're just looking in the New Testament, you're going to follow this grace-only stuff. If you're just looking at the Old Testament, you're going to fall because you're not going to have any faith in Yeshua. You got to have both parts. It's one book, people. It's not two books. This reminds me of, you will not surely die, in Genesis. And it's all through the Old Testament, and then it's all through the New Testament. A lot of the New Testament's just telling you about fulfillment. Jude said, Beloved, although I was very eager to write to you about our common salvation, I found it necessary to write appealing to you to contend for the faith that was once for all delivered to the saints. For certain people have crept in unnoticed, who long ago were designated for the condemnation, ungodly people who pervert the grace of Elohim into sensuality and deny our only Master and Yeshua HaMashiach. So Jude is cautioning about this grace only also. They saw it happening. I wish they would have warned the ones that stuck with Yeshua. I wish they would have warned more strongly. Jude was actually Yeshua's brother or half brother. Paul's teaching that was instituted is comparable to the serpent in the garden. 1 Corinthians 8:7-11. However, not everyone has knowledge. In fact, some have been so used to idolatry till now that when they eat food offered to an idol, their conscience being weak is defiled. Food will not make us unacceptable to Elohim. We're no worse off if we do eat, nor better off if we do. But be careful that this right of yours in no way becomes a stumbling block to the weak. For if someone sees you and the one who has knowledge dining at the idol's temple, won't his weak conscience be encouraged to eat food offered to idols? Then the weak person, the brother for whom Messiah died, is ruined by your knowledge. We have Yeshua, Yahuwah, and the apostles saying different from what Paul taught. Yeshua in Revelation 2:14-16, he says, But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast them that hold to the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. I mean, he is directly speaking about Paul's 1 Corinthians 8:7-11. He's telling you right there, this is wrong. Don't believe it. Then we also have the real apostles in Acts telling they forbid eating food to idols. It's just like the serpent. You will not surely die. I don't know how anybody could defend Paul's teachings of this false doctrine and the stumbling block, which is the very doctrine that Messiah condemns as a stumbling block and a doctrine of Balaam. The problem actually came in because there was an acceptance of another's teachings and not Yeshua's. And in John, he says, I come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, you will receive him. Now, let's keep looking at Jeremiah and comparing. I did not send these prophets, yet they ran with the message. I did not speak to them, yet they prophesied. If they had stood in my counsel, they would have enabled my people to hear my words, and would have turned them back from their evil ways and evil deeds. Am I an Elohim who is only near? This is Yahuwah's declaration, and not Elohim who is far away. Can a man hide himself in a secret place where I cannot see him? Yahuwah's declaration. Do I not feel the heavens and earth? Yahuwah's declaration. Now, let's look at Paul, what he's saying here. Romans 3:7. For the truth of Elohim hath abounded more through my lie unto his glory. Why am I yet judged a sinner? He's telling you right there, I'm telling a lie, but why are you judging me a sinner? 1 Corinthians 4:16. I call upon you, therefore, become ye followers of me. He didn't say, become followers of Yeshua or of Elohim. No, become followers of me. Romans 2:16. in the day when Elohim shall judge the secrets of men by Yeshua HaMashiach according to my gospel. So he's saying that when you go to judgment, you're going to be judged according to his gospel, not Yahuwah's. Now that's nuts. Jeremiah 23, continuing on. I've heard what the prophets who prophesy lie in my name. I had a dream, I had a dream. How long will this continue in the minds of the prophets prophesying lies, prophets of deceit of their own minds? Through their dreams that they tell one another, they plan to cause my people to forget my name, as the fathers forgot my name, through Baal worship. The prophet who has only a dream should recount the dream, but the one who has my word should speak my word truthfully. For what is straw compared to grain? This is Yahuwah's declaration. Is not my word like fire, says Yahuwah, declaration, and like a hammer that pulverizes rock? And I think that comment about the rock is in there so we know that Peter the rock is the one he's talking about. Acts 10:15. And a voice again came to him for a second time. The things of Elohim made clean, don't you be making defiled. 10:28. But Elohim has shown me that I should not call any man impure or unclean. Matthew 10:5. These 12 Yeshua sent out, instructed them, go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no towns of Samaritans, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So here they are changing another rule that Yeshua gave them. He told them to go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But Peter says he gets a dream and a voice, and all of a sudden they're to do something different. It goes right along with the prophets. I'm just going to mention this part because this kind of caught me off guard here. I went back and looked at where Peter is given directions to be the one in authority over the assembly. And it's like, I never realized before that only Matthew has this. And then in Mark and in Luke, there's no instruction to build on Peter. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm just going to bring that up because I don't really know what to do with that, and I don't know if it's accurate or not because so many years have gone by that we have no way of knowing what was added and subtracted from the word. Isaiah tells us this would happen, and that Peter would be instated and become like a peg securely fastened. Isaiah 22, the oracle concerning the valley of vision. What do you mean that you have gone up, all of you, to the rooftops? And you were full of shoutings and tumultuous city, exultant town. Your slain are not slain with a sword or dead in battle. All your leaders have fled together without a bow, and they were captured. All of you were captured, though they had fled far away. Therefore I said, look away from me. Let me weep bitter tears. Do not labor to comfort me concerning the destruction of the daughter of my people. Now we see when Peter here in Acts 10:9-11. The next day they were on a journey and approaching the city, and Peter went up on the housetop about the 6th hour to pray. He became hungry and wanted something to eat, but while they were preparing it, he fell into a trance and saw heavens opened and something like a great sheet descending, being let down by its four corners of the earth. I think his vision that Isaiah is tying the housetops to the vision Peter had. And it's very interesting that say you're slain or not slain with the sword or dead in battle. In other words, Isaiah is telling you that these are people slain spiritually, not by battle or swords and things like that. Continuing on here in Isaiah 22, for Yahuwah Elohim of hosts has a day of tumult and trampling and confusion in the valley of vision, a battering down of walls and a shouting to the mountains. And Elam bore a quiver with the chariots and horsemen, and Ker uncovered the shield. Your choicest valleys were full of chariots, and your horsemen took their stand at the gates. He has taken away the covering of Judah. In that day you looked to the weapons of the house of the forest, and you saw the breaches of the city of David were many. You collected the waters in the lower pool, and counted the horses of Jerusalem, and you broke off the houses to fortify the walls. You made a reservoir between the two walls for the water of the old pool, but you did not look to him who did it, or see him who planned it long ago. I think we didn't see this coming. We didn't see this flock of the doomed. We didn't see the curse because we weren't studying the Old Testament. You got to know that in Isaiah 55, we're told, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith Yahuwah. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. He sees way in advance. He knows what we're going to do before we do it, and he knew that he would be betrayed. Isaiah 22. In that day, says Yahuwah Elohim of hosts, called for the weeping and mourning, for baldness and wearing sackcloth, and behold, joy and gladness, killing oxen, and slaughtering sheep, and eating the flesh. Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. Yahuwah of hosts has revealed himself in my ears. Surely this iniquity will not be atoned for until you die, says Yahuwah Elohim of hosts. It's really funny because both Paul and Pope Francis echo Isaiah in this verse, and this is what Paul says. What do I gain if, humanly speaking, I fought the beast at Ephesus, if the dead are not raised? Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. It's real interesting that he brings up Ephesus too, because that's the church in Revelation 2:2 that Yeshua commends for not accepting the false apostles. And then it's really eerie to me that Pope Francis mirrors this. It says, is that if at times our efforts and works seem to fail and not produce fruit, we need to remember that we are followers of Jesus Christ, and his life, humanly speaking, ended in the failure of the cross. And see, he's bringing up several points there: producing fruit, the false name of Jesus Christ, and the humanly speaking, and the failure of the cross. I think the past prophecies are connecting what happened after Yeshua and ascended into heaven, and also what is happening right now today. Isaiah 22. Thus says Yahuwah Elohim hosts, come and go to this steward, to Sheben, who is over the household, and say to him, what have you to do here, and whom have you here that you have cut out here a tomb for yourself? You who cut out a tomb on the height and carve out a dwelling for yourself in the rock. Behold, Yahuwah will hurl you away violently. O you strong man, he will seize firm hold on you and whirl you around and around and throw you like a ball into a wide land. There you shall die. There you shall be glorious chariots, in your shame of your master's house. I will trust you from your office, and you will be pulled down from your station. In that day I will call my servant Eliakim, and the son of Hilkiah, And I will clothe him with your robe, and will bind your sash on him, and will commit your authority into his hand. He shall be a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and to the house of Judah. And I will place on his shoulder the key to the house of David. He shall open, and none shall shut, and he shall shut, and none shall open. And I will fasten him like a peg in a secure place. And he shall become a throne of honor to his father's house, the offspring and issue, every small vessel, from cups to flagons. And in that day, declares Yahuwah of hosts, the peg that was fastened in a secure way, it will be cut down and fall, and the load that was on it will be cut off, for Yahuwah has spoken. He's talking about the Roman Catholic Church that Peter started. That key that was given to Peter is going to be cut down and fall off, and it will be cut off. How do I know that? Because he carved out a dwelling for yourself in the rock. That's what they did. Jeremiah 23:30-32. Therefore take note, I am against the prophets, Yahuwah's declaration, who steal my words from each other. I am against the prophets, Yahuwah's declaration, who use their own tongues to make a declaration. I am against those who prophesy false dreams, Yahuwah's declaration, telling them and leading my people astray with their falsehoods and their boasting. It was not I who sent or commanded them, and they are of no benefit at all to these people. This is Yahuwah's declaration. We see that in Acts 16:9 and 10. And a vision appeared to Paul in the night. A man of Macedonia was standing there, urging him and saying, Come over to Macedonia and help us. And when he saw the vision, immediately he sought to go forth to Macedonia, concluding that Elohim had created us to announce the good news to them. Him and Peter are the main two that had visions and dreams. Jeremiah 23:33-40. And now these people or the prophet or priest ask you, what is the burden of Yahuwah? You will respond to them, what is the burden? I will throw you away. This is Yahuwah's declaration. As for the prophet, priest, or people who say the burden of Yahuwah, I will punish that man and his household. This is what each man is to say to his friend and to his brother. What has Yahuwah answered, and what has Yahuwah spoken? But no longer refer to the burden of Yahuwah, for each man's word become his burden, and you pervert the words of the living Elohim. Yahuwah of hosts, your Elohim, you must say to the prophet, what has Yahuwah answered you, and what has Yahuwah spoken? But if they say, the burden of Yahuwah, then this is what Yahuwah says, because you have said, the burden of Yahuwah, and I specifically told you not to say, the burden of Yahuwah, I will surely forget you and throw you away from my presence, both you and the city that I gave you and your fathers, and I will bring on you an everlasting shame and humiliation that will never be forgotten. Now, first thing I noticed about this when I was reading it was, I specifically told you not to say the burden of Yahuwah. This is somebody that Yeshua was speaking to. Now, in Acts 15:10 and 11, this is what was said. Now, therefore, why are you putting Elohim to the test by placing a yoke on the necks of the disciples that neither our fathers nor we have been able to bear? But we believe that we will be saved through the grace of our Master Yeshua, just as they will. Now, he's saying a yoke, which is a burden. So Jeremiah is telling us that they're going to say a burden, that it's the burden of Yahuwah. But he specifically told them not to say that. So they went against what Yeshua told them. Just so y'all know, this all goes back to the evening and the morning prophecy. Paul is the ravening wolf of the tribe of Benjamin. If you look at Matthew 24:24, for false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive even the elect. And then Paul brags on that with signs and wonders of the mighty works he performed the utmost as an apostle. Paul brags being from the tribe of Benjamin in Philippians 3:4-5. You've got three major events. Paul to the Ephesians, I am an apostle of Yeshua. The Ephesians to Paul, no you're not. Yeshua to the Ephesians in Revelation 2:2, well done. You've got the prophecies. They start in Genesis 49:1 and Genesis 49:27. And it says, Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoils. It's exactly what happened. And this moves right on into Daniel 8:26-27. If you haven't watched my videos on Daniel, I suggest watching them because I think they're very accurate. How do we know who he was? Well, basically, his name means Sheol in ancient Hebrew. In Greek, it means rotten, worthless, bad, corrupt. He's mentioned in all the prophets just about. Isaiah actually tells you who Paul was. Isaiah 28:14-22. Therefore hear the words of Yahuwah, scornful men, rulers of the people in Jerusalem, because you have said we cut a covenant with death, and we've made our vision with Sheol, or Saul. When the overwhelming rod passes through, it will not come to us, for we have made the lie our refuge, and we've hidden in falsehood. So Adonai Yahuwah says, behold, I place in Zion a stone, a foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. He who believes shall not hurry, and I will lay justice for a line, and righteousness for a plummet, and the hail shall weep away the refuge of the lie, and the water shall overflow the hiding place, and your covenant with death shall be atoned for. Your vision with Saul shall not rise up. When the overwhelming whip passes through, then you shall be for trampling to it. As often as it passes, it shall take you. For morning by morning it pass, and by day and by night, and it'll be a terror to understand the message. For the bed is shorter than one can stretch himself on, and the cover is narrower than one can wrap himself in. For Yahuwah shall rise up as on Mount Perazim. He shall be stirred up as in Gibeon valley to do his work, his strange work, and to perform his task, his foreign task. So then, do not be mockers, that your bonds not be made strong. For I have heard from Adonai, Yahuwah of hosts, that a full end is decreed on all the earth. Exactly what they did. They made the lie the refuge, and they hid in falsehood instead of following Yeshua. John 5:43. I come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another come in his own name, him you will receive. I put this in here just because I want to make a point of something. Say you go to a church, and the pastor gets up, and he says, I'm going to hand old Billy Bob here to Satan. Or better yet, say he's going to hand your wife or your child or you, so that he's saved on the day of Yahuwah. Would you just sit there and nod and say okay? That's exactly what people are doing when they follow Paul and not Yeshua. Because that's Paul's doctrine. 1 Corinthians 5:5. You're to deliver this man to Satan for the destruction of his flesh, so that his spirit may be saved in the day of Yahuwah. Same thing in 1 Timothy 1:19-20. By rejecting this, some have made shipwreck of their faith, among whom are Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I have handed over to Satan, that they may learn not to blaspheme. There's a reason Yeshua told us this. John 14:6. Yeshua said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Satan has been kicked out of heaven. It happened while Yeshua was here. He said, I saw Satan fall from the sky. Satan has no say. He can't go back. And he saves nobody. So if nothing else tells you that Paul is a liar, this should. Revelation 12:7-9. Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. You get that? No longer a place for him. He has no place in heaven. How's he going to save you if he has no place in heaven? And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is also called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. So who saves you, Satan or Yeshua? The stolen heritage. Jeremiah 12:10-17. The shepherds stole Yeshua's heritage and reaped thorns. Many shepherds have destroyed my vineyard. They have trampled down my portion. They made my pleasant portion a desolate wilderness. They have made a desolation desolate. It mourns me. The whole land is made desolate, but no man lays it to heart. Upon all the bare heights of the desert, destroyers have come. For the sword and Yahuwah devours, and from one end of the land to the other, no flesh shall have peace. They've sown wheat and reaped thorns. They've tired themselves out, but profit nothing. They shall be ashamed of their harvest, because of the fierce anger of Yahuwah. Thus says Yahuwah concerning my evil neighbors, who touched the heritage that I had given my people Israel to inherit. Behold, I will pluck them up from their land, and I will pluck up the house of Judah from among them. And after I have plucked them up, I will again have compassion on them. I will bring them again, each into his heritage, and each to his land. And it shall come to pass, if they will diligently learn my ways, my people, to swear by my name, as Yahuwah lives, even as they taught my people to swear by Baal, they shall be built up in the midst of my people. But if any nation will not listen, they will utterly be plucked up and destroyed, says Yahuwah. And Jeremiah 50:16-18. Cut off the sower from Babylon, the one who handles the sickle at the time of harvest, for fear of the sword of the oppressor. Everyone will return to his own people, and everyone will flee to his own land. Behold, I will visit and punish the king of Babylon and his land, just as I visited and punished the king of Assyria. Matthew 13:25. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. In verse 36 and 43, and the disciples came to him, saying, Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. And he asked, The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of age, and the reapers are the angels. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with the fire, so will it be in the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels and gather out of all his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers, and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. He's telling you the weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. Who sowed lawlessness? Romans 6:14. Ye are not under the law. Why do we have billions of followers today that think they're not under the law? Paul. So, who sowed them? The devil? Paul. What's going to happen to the lawbreakers? They're going to be thrown in the fiery furnace. Matthew 13:33. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman took out and hid in 3 measures of flour till it was all leavened. And then in Matthew 16:6, Yeshua said to them, watch and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. In Mark 8:15, he cautioned them, watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Okay, who was the Pharisee? Paul was. In Romans 16:11, he tells you he was a member of Herod's family. He said, greet my kinsman Herodian. You can look it up. Herodian, it means of the family member of Herod. Philippians 3:5, circumcised on the 8th day of the people of Israel and the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as to the law of Pharisee. Yeshua was constantly warning them, and it was so specific that you can point out who it was. Matthew 15:19-20. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. And see, Paul tells you in Ephesians 6:12, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and against authorities, against cosmic powers, over the present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. In the heavenly places of all, it's just crazy. Acts 7:58. They threw him out of the city and began to stone him, and the witnesses laid their robes at the feet of the young man named Saul. Saul was there, and he was okay with them killing Stephen. So, check number 1, murderer. 2 Corinthians 11:8. I robbed other churches by taking pay from them to minister to you. Check number 2, theft. 2 Corinthians 11:5. Indeed, I consider that I am not in the least inferior to these super apostles. Slander and what all else, bragging, boasting. Romans 7:19. For the good that I want to do, I do not do. I practice the very evil that I do not want. But if I am doing the very thing I do not want, I am no longer the one doing it, but the sin that dwells in me. Check number 4. He's going to do evil, period. Romans 3:7. For if the truth of Elohim have abounded more through my lie unto the glory, why am I judged a sinner? Check number 5, liar. I mean, you can just go on and on and on. Matthew lets us know that there was more than one betrayer also. Matthew 10:4. I thought this was interesting because he mentions one of the apostles, Simon the Canaanite, and this is not Simon Peter. and Judas Iscariot, who also betrayed him. So he's talking about more than one betrayer. But I thought this word Canaanite, when I was researching this, was interesting, and I'm just going to throw this in as a sidebar. Because Zechariah 14:21 says, yes, every pot in Jerusalem and Judah shall be holiness to Yahuwah of hosts. Everyone who sacrifices shall come and take them and cook in them. And in that day there shall no longer be a Canaanite in the house of Yahuwah of hosts. So I don't know. I guess I need to research the Simon the Canaanite, but there's not a whole lot in there about him from what I initially found. But I just thought that was interesting since he mentions there'll be no more Canaanites, period. I just threw that in as a sidebar. Let's look at the end and why Yahuwah was angry. Behold, Yahuwah is about to lay waste to the world, and he'll make it desolate, and he'll lay bare the surface of it, and scatter them that dwell therein. And the people shall be as the priest, and the servant as the master, and the maid as the mistress. The buyer shall be as the seller, and the lender as the borrower, and the debtor as the creditor. The earth shall be completely laid waste. The earth shall be utterly spoiled. For the mouth of Yahuwah has spoken these things. The earth mourns, and the world is ruined, and the lofty one of the earth are mourning. As she has sinned by reason of her inhabitants, because they have transgressed the law, they've changed the ordinances, even the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse shall consume the earth, because the inhabitants thereof have sinned. Therefore the dwellers on the earth shall be poor, and few men shall be left. The wine shall mourn, the vine shall mourn, all the merry-hearted shall sigh. The mirth of timbrels has ceased, the sound of the harp has ceased. They are ashamed, and they have not drunk wine. Strong drink has become bitter to them. That drink, all the city has become desolate. One shall shut up his house, so that none shall enter. There's a howling of the wine for everywhere. All the mirth of the land has ceased. All the mirth of the land has departed. What I find real interesting about this is he's telling us exactly what he's upset about, and it's exactly the things that were done. They've sinned. They've transgressed the law, changed the ordinances, the everlasting covenant, and a curse shall consume the earth. We're under that curse right now because everybody thinks they're doing the right thing, but they're not, and it's very upsetting once you see this. Second part, and the city shall be left desolate, and the houses being left shall fall to ruin. All this shall be in the land in the midst of the nations, as if one should strip an olive tree, so shall they strip them. And when the vintage is done, these shall cry out loud, and they that are left on the land shall rejoice together in the glory of Yahuwah. The water of the sea shall be troubled, therefore shall the glory of Yahuwah be in the isles of the sea. The name of Yahuwah shall be glorious. O Yahuwah Elohim of Israel, from the ends of the earth we have heard of wonderful things. Hope to the godly, but they shall say, woe to the despisers that despise the law. Fear and the pit and a snare are upon you that dwell on the earth. And it shall come to pass that he that flees from the fear shall fall in the pit, and he that comes up out of the pit shall be caught in the snare. For the windows have been opened in heaven, and the foundations of the earth be shaken. The earth shall be utterly confounded. The earth shall be completely perplexed. It will reel as a drunkard, and one oppressed with wine. And the earth shall be shaken as a storehouse of fruits. For iniquity has prevailed upon it, and it shall fall, and it shall not be able to rise. Elohim shall bring his hand upon the host of heaven and upon the kings of earth, and they shall gather the multitude thereof into prisons, and they shall shut them in their stronghold. After many generations they shall be visited. And the bricks shall decay, and the wall shall fall. For Yahuwah shall reign out of Zion and out of Jerusalem, and shall be glorified before his elders. It's pretty depressing. It makes you really scared. Some will see and correct their course. That's what Malachi tells us in 3:16-18. And at that time, those who feared Yahuwah spoke to one another. Yahuwah took notice and listened. So a book of remembrance was written before him for those who feared Yahuwah and had a high regard for his name. They will be mine, says Yahuwah of hosts, a special possession on the day I am preparing. I will have compassion on them as a man has compassion on his son who serves him. So you will again see the difference between the righteous and the wicked, between the one who serves Elohim and the one that does not serve him. And Daniel echoes this in Daniel 12:10. Many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined, but the wicked shall act wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But those who are wise shall understand. We got to be wise, people. We got to be seeing this, because if we don't see it, you're going to perish. Now, Yahuwah tells us he doesn't change in Malachi 3:6. For I am Yahuwah, I change not. Now, a lot of people think, well, I'm a foreigner or a stranger or I'm a Gentile, so I'm not under the law. That's not true. When you look at Leviticus 19:34, the stranger who resides with you shall be as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt, and I am Yahuwah your Elohim. Exodus 12:49. The same law applies to the native as to the stranger who sojourns among you. Leviticus 24:22. There shall be one standard for you, and it shall be for the stranger as well as the native, for I am Yahuwah your Elohim. Numbers 9:14. If an alien sojourns among you and observes the Passover to you according to the statute of the Passover and according to its ordinance, so he shall do. You shall have one statute both for the alien and for the native of the land. If you don't see this anywhere else, and most prophecy teachers today will skip this verse, but you need to think about it. The great day of Yahuwah and future prophecy. Malachi 4. That's what this little chapter is about. For behold, the day is coming, burning like an oven, when the arrogant and all the evildoers will be stubble. The day that it is coming shall set them ablaze, says Yahuwah of hosts, so that it will leave them neither root nor branch. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in his wings. You shall go out leaping like calves from a stall, and you shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet. And on that day, when I act, says Yahuwah of hosts, remember the law of my servant Moses, the statutes and rules that I commanded him at Horeb for all Israel. Behold, I will send out Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of Yahuwah comes, and he will turn the hearts of fathers to their children, and the hearts of children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the land with the decree of utter destruction. This is our warning in Deuteronomy. You shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for Yahuwah your Elohim is testing you to find out if you love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul. You shall follow Yahuwah your Elohim and fear him, and you shall keep his commandments, listen to his voice, serve him, and cling to him. He's testing us. And this is all a test, and we have to pass. Our eternity is riding on whether we pass this test or not. We're all drowning in lies and deception. Jeremiah tells us about that. O Yahuwah, my strength and my fortress and my refuge. In the day of affliction, the nations shall come to you from the ends of the earth and say, our fathers have inherited only lies of vanity, and there is no profit in them. The saddest thing of all is that those who call themselves pastors have not studied out the Bible and correctly relayed the facts to people. We have billions that are probably going to perish due to incorrect information being given to them. Yahuwah is the ultimate judge. I'm not sitting judge of everyone. I am merely going by what I'm reading in the Old Testament, the prophets, and Yeshua's words. I pray this information's helped you see what course of action you need to take in your own personal life to please Yahuwah, our Father. Because unless we're pleasing him, we're just wasting time. My conclusion is I believe Paul was indeed an anti-Messiah, and he'll be back in the form of some kind of plastic Jesus. I also believe that we are much further along in our prophecies than people think. I believe Peter went along with him and let himself be bound and went where he shouldn't have gone. The doctrines of Pauline Christianity are not what Yahuwah and Yeshua taught. They're lawlessness. Paul destroyed the Son's message by building a different Messiah. He did away with the Sabbaths, the feasts, the diet, and the things that Yeshua taught. He was lawless, denied Yeshua's risen in the flesh, and preached his own gospel. He changed the law of Elohim. Most will not even recognize the returning Messiah. Because he's Jewish, he taught the Torah and kept the Torah. The real apostles did also, the ones that didn't go back on their word. My best advice for everybody is Revelation 18:4. I heard a voice saying, come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, and lest you share in her plagues. What I shared with you is serious, and I don't want you to let it make you doubt Yeshua. He's very real, and he loves you very much. As always, I debated whether to share this, but I feel like it's truth and not lies, and it should be shared. He said, if you abide in my word, and you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. All these prophecies, they complete and they reaffirm Yeshua HaMashiach. They don't do away with them. They reaffirm that everything happened exactly as it was prophesied. Now we need to take advice of Jeremiah one more time in 6:16. Thus says Yahuwah, stand ye in the ways, and see, and ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein. You have to go back to the forgotten way. You have to go back to Yeshua's laws and the Old Testament teachings. I hope Elohim blesses you and keeps you. May Elohim make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Elohim lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. Shalom, everybody.